Greetings. At this moment, while we speak, clinical trials are underway to try to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. This is something scientists all over the world are working on, and there's a process they follow, the scientific method. If you look at chapter 6, the beginning of the chapter, early on in the chapter, there's something called the science of clinical trials. Vaughn goes to great length explaining what that is. And you may have studied this before in high school, in other classes you've taken at Salem State. You may have talked about the process that something goes through, a medication, for example. In order to be approved, it has to go through a process where it's first tested on animals, for example, then eventually it's tested on humans and such. Well, that's happening right now with COVID-19. Because of abuses that have taken place in the past, historic abuses, and some of the more well-known ones are what happened in Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s. Dr. Mengele, his name has become synonymous with unethical, torturous ways of experimenting on people. If you look up some of the experiments Dr. Mengele did, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And in our own country, the Tuskegee study, which looked at the effects of syphilis, untreated syphilis, in black men in the South, and this went on for years and years and years. And if you look at the details of this study, and there is actually an in-depth section in the text in this chapter that talks about this study and what happened. It's absolutely horrific. There are other examples as well. You might want to take a look at this. There was a study that was done that came to light recently, and it wasn't testing medication or the effects of a disease per se, but it was looking at, it was a psychological test. A documentary was made about it called Three Identical Strangers. Some of you may have seen it. I recommend it. It's an excellent documentary about nature versus nurture, where these three men, triplets, were separated at birth and placed in different families of different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, to see what the effects of their upbringing would have on them. And they were never supposed to meet one another. They didn't know they were triplets, but they did end up meeting. And the story is remarkable. But that also shows you sort of the unethical way that certain studies are done. Anyway, there is a process. There is a process that pharmaceutical companies, scientists, doctors, colleges, and universities have to follow when working with people, when working with human subjects. And this chapter really goes into great depth and gives some really good information about that. If you end up going on to earn, say, a master's degree or a doctorate, you may have to work with people. And maybe not testing out medicine, but maybe you just need to interview people because you're doing a sociological dissertation or something like that. Anytime you work with people and you're working on a study, you need to clear your research question and methodology with something called an IRB or an ASC. Depending on the institution, they use different names. IRB means Internal Review Board. ASC is Advanced Studies Committee. These are made up of professionals who review your proposal to make sure that it's ethical, that it follows the dictates of accepted moral practice. part of what you need to do when you do a study that involves humans, again, whether it's a medical study or, maybe just a study that involves focus groups where you're going to talk to people and conduct interviews. Murray outlines the steps that are involved, the information that you need to provide participants with. And I'm just going to read this part of the chapter for you, with you, because it's quite important. It comes if you look in the chapter, some of you have different editions of the text, but about 7-8 pages in, it has a bunch of bullet points that tell you what these the characteristics that you need to give, the standards, if you will, that you need to provide your participants with. Anyway, each individual is invited to participate as a subject in research and the aims and methods of the research, the expected duration of the subject's participation, the benefits that might reasonably be expected to result to the subjects or to others as an outcome of the research, any foreseeable risks or discomfort to the subject associated with participation in the research, any alternative procedures or courses of treatment that might be as advantageous to the subject as the procedure or treatment being tested, the extent to which confidentiality of records is maintained, in which the subject is identified, how that will be maintained, the extent of the investigator's responsibility, if any, to provide medical services to the subject, that therapy will be provided free of charge for specific types of research-related injury, whether the subject or the subject's family or dependents will be compensated for disability or death resulting from such injury, that the individual is free to refuse to participate and will be free to withdraw from the research at any time without penalty or loss of benefit to which he would otherwise be entitled. Let me unpack that a little bit. You're going to say, conduct a study. Say you work for a pharmaceutical company and you want to test the effects of a new medication that's going to help lower blood pressure. I don't know, could be anything. The people that are going to participate in the study need to get a written document from you that lets them know a number of things. It lets them know that they are volunteering to be in this study, and that means they can leave anytime they wish. They can quit, and there are no penalties for that. You have to tell them what the study is going to be, what you're doing. You need to tell them if they're going to be compensated for their time. You need to tell them, what the risks and benefits of the study are. All of this needs to be disclosed. Again, please read this section in the textbook because it gives great details as to the information you need to provide to subjects. In many ways, we as a people are reactive. We're not proactive. You know what I mean? We come up with policies and procedures when something goes wrong, right? If you think of all the security and the protocols and the procedures that are involved when you take a plane, when you fly, a lot of that is a reaction to incidents such as September 11th. What happened on September 11th? We reacted to that by putting safeguards in place. Well, these safeguards to protect people who are involved in research are the result of abuses. A couple of them I just mentioned. Some the experiments Nazi doctors did, and what our own government did in the early to late 20th century as part of the Tuskegee syphilis study. So I really want you need to know as you go through this chapter, you need to be well versed in what is the scientific method. Again, Vaughn talks about that quite early in the chapter. So make sure you understand what that is. Again, you may have studied this before. Make sure you know it. The other thing you need to know is what is involved in conducting a study that uses human beings to ensure that they are protected, that they won't be abused, that they won't be exploited, that they won't have to undergo unnecessary risk. Okay, all of that you need to look at and think about. We call this informed consent. Informed consent is when you agree to do something, but you have all the information you need to make a rational, intelligent, responsible decision. That the researcher is not withholding any information from you, particularly information that would change your mind, right? You need to be told everything you need to know to make a rational, conscious, moral decision. That's informed consent. Make sure you understand that term, along with the other terms that are at the end of the chapter. Things such as blinding or a blind study, clinical trial, placebo, randomization. Make sure you understand that. Read the summary that comes later in the chapter. And I really recommend that you take some time and really dig into the 3 case studies, the cases for evaluation that come at the end of the chapter. I also asked you this week to take a look at some of the articles. You've figured out already the way these chapters are set up. There's the learning, if you like, that Vaughn puts forth. There's a summary, there are terms you need to know, there are case studies, and then there are a series of articles. Some of them are scholarly articles, some of them are court findings. They vary. Some of them are speeches that different personalities have given. There's many of them at the end of this chapter, beginning with the Nuremberg Code, and then it goes to the Declaration of Helsinki, ethical practices for medical research involving human subjects. Look through some of these. Pick a couple of them and delve deep into them. Really read them and see what they're saying about ethical treatment of subjects involved in research. Some people, I teach a course in environmental ethics, and in that class, we talk about animal rights. Animals are often used in the early stages of research to test, whether it's a medication or a vaccine or treatment of some kind on them. And there are some people who have concerns about that. What are the rights of animals when it comes to these things? We're not getting into that. That's not where we're going. I mean, that's an important question, and it's an important point to consider, but we're not dealing with that in this part of the course. We're strictly dealing with human subjects, about giving informed consent, about the policies and procedures that have to be in place in order for research to be considered moral, to be considered ethical. Whether that research is done at a college, a university, a laboratory, whether it's done by the government or a pharmaceutical company or an independent researcher, it doesn't matter. These are protocols that need to be in place. So make sure you read this chapter carefully. Make sure you understand the historic abuses that led to the development of these policies and procedures. That's it for now. That's sort of the lecture to get us started. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, you can email me, jtamilio@salemstate.edu. My phone number is listed on the syllabus. It's 913-909-6591. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me. I hope you're safe. I hope that you're well, and I hope that greater minds than ours come up with a cure to this virus soon, and that we can get back to some semblance of normal. Take care, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.